I still don't know if he was human. All I remember are the eyes watching me through the blinds night after night, glassy, unblinking, and far too close to my window. Before we begin, tell me, what city are you watching from? I might be able to find and tell a real terrifying story that happened right in your hometown. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, leave a like, and drop a comment. You won't want to miss what's coming. Trust me, especially because the ending of tonight's stories will leave you speechless. I used to think the creepiest thing about my apartment building was the old elevator that groaned like it was taking its final breath every time someone rode it. That was before I met the man in 1B. Or rather, before he noticed me. It started on an ordinary Tuesday evening. I'd just moved into the building a few weeks prior, still unpacking boxers and adjusting to the constant hum of the traffic outside my window. My unit 1D was at the end of the hallway, the kind of spot that felt almost too quiet, tucked away from everything else. I was dragging a trash bag down the hallway toward the chute when I heard a door creak behind me. I turned and saw a man standing in the doorway of 1B. He was thin, almost painfully so, with pale skin that stretched tight across his cheekbones. His hair was neatly combed, parted perfectly down the middle, and his clothes, despite being outdated, were spotless. But what stood out most were his eyes, wide, shiny, unblinking, even as he stared directly at me. "Evening," I said, offering a polite smile. He didn't respond. He just watched. A few seconds passed, long, uncomfortable ones. Then, as I turned away, I heard him whisper, barely audible, like he was talking to himself. Finally, someone knew. I pretended I didn't hear it and kept walking. That night, I brushed it off. Weird neighbors were part of apartment life. Everyone had at least one. But the next morning, when I stepped outside to leave for work, I noticed something strange. My doormat had been flipped over. At first, I thought maybe I had done it accidentally, until I saw the tiny indentation of a shoe print right in the center of it. A single print, small, narrow. Someone had been standing at my door. I tried not to think too much about it. But the next day, again, the mat was flipped. This time, further from my door, as if it had been nudged or kicked lightly. By the third morning, the mat wasn't flipped at all. It was gone. I found it later, leaning upright against my door frame, positioned perfectly, like someone had carefully placed it there. That evening, I walked past 1B, curiosity gnawing at me. The door was slightly ajar, and behind the gap, I could see him, the man, standing perfectly still in the darkness, staring directly at me through the sliver. I froze. He didn't blink, didn't move, didn't acknowledge that I clearly saw him watching. I backed away slowly and hurried inside my place. I locked the door, telling myself he was just eccentric, maybe lonely. But then came the footsteps. At exactly 2:13 a.m., the first time I heard them, I jolted awake to the soft, rhythmic sound of someone pacing just outside my door. Slow steps, moving back and forth, like someone was trying to decide whether to knock or break in. I held my breath. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then, a soft exhale. Right outside the door, like someone pressing their face close to it, smelling the air inside. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, bleary-eyed and paranoid, I checked my peephole before leaving for work. That's when I saw it. A single, freshly pressed, yellow, sticky note stuck to my door. In thin, shaky handwriting, it read, "Do you sleep?" Just 3 words. But my blood ran cold. I tore it down and immediately went to the building manager. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Let me guess, 1B," he said, almost annoyed, like this wasn't new. "Yes, that guy he's watching me. He left something." The manager shook his head. "There is no one in 1B. I stared at him. "What?" "I saw him. Several times. Tall, very pale, weird eyes. "That apartment's been vacant for almost a year," he insisted. "The last tenant left after, well, some issues. But trust me, no one lives there now." I felt my stomach twist. "He opened the door," I argued. He stood in the doorway. The manager sighed again, already walking to his office. The locks were changed. No one can get in there without a key, and I have the only copy. I left feeling more confused than ever. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening for the footsteps. For hours, there was nothing, until exactly 2:30 a.m. at first. Just silence. Then, something new. A whisper through the door, a voice, low, breathless. "Too close. I know you're awake." My chest tightened as I pressed my hand over my mouth, trying not to make a sound. Another whisper followed, quieter, almost affectionate. "You don't sleep either, do you?" I lunged toward the peephole, desperate and terrified, praying I'd see no one. But I did see someone. I saw the pale face from 1B, inches from my door. His eyes huge and reflecting the hallway lights like an animal's. Only this time, he was smiling. A slow, unnatural stretch of lips that didn't match anything human. And right as I backed away from the door in horror, he whispered again, "You left your mat turned the wrong way. I didn't open my door that night." I sat on the floor with my back against it, every muscle tensed, listening to the slow scrape of fingernails dragging gently, almost lovingly dune to wood. Then, after what felt like hours, the hallway fell quiet again. The next morning, I checked the peephole before stepping out. The hall was empty. My doormat, however, was perfectly aligned, placed with almost surgical precision directly in front of my door. It felt less like a courtesy and more like a message. I was here. I can come back. I went straight to the building manager's office. "I don't care what you think," I snapped, slamming my keys on his desk. "Someone is in that apartment." He looked genuinely bothered now, but not in the way I expected. Not annoyed, concerned. "Look, the last tenant in 1B, he said, lowering his voice, complained about the same thing, that someone was watching him through the blinds at night, leaving things outside his door. Whispering through the walls, my skin prickled. "What happened to him?" I whispered. The manager hesitated. "He moved out, very soothingly, didn't take anything with him." There was a long silence. "Please," I said, "just check." "Open it. I'll go with you." He rubbed his face and finally agreed. We walked down the hallway together. When we reached the door of 1B, he knocked once, then inserted his key. The door swung open with a dry groan. Inside, empty. Utterly empty. The room was cold, and naturally cold for a unit that had supposedly been unoccupied for months. There was no furniture, no signs of habitation. Dust coated the windowsills, the corners, the countertop. But across the dusty floor were footprints, small ones, bare, leading from the center of the room straight to the wall adjoining my apartment. Then back to the door. My throat tightened. The manager's face went pale. I don't know what that is," he muttered. "This place has been locked for months." We backed out quickly. He locked the door again, double-checking it twice. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake until 2:30 a.m., terrified of hearing the footsteps again. But instead, something worse happened. A shadow moved outside my window. I lived on the ground floor. There was no balcony, no fire escape, nothing for anyone to stand on. But someone was standing outside my bedroom window anyway. I saw the silhouette, thin, motionless, head tilted slightly as if studying me through the curtains. My breath caught. I didn't move, didn't blink. Slowly, the shadow leaned forward, pressing closer to the glass. I could hear breathing, long, shaky inhales, soft, giddy exhalations, the sound of someone savoring the moment. My phone was on the nightstand, inches away. I reached for it carefully, trying not to rustle the sheets. A faint tapping came from the window. Tap, tap, tap. Light and deliberate, like fingernails on the glass. My hand froze inches above my phone. Tap, tap, tap. The tapping grew more frantic, like it sensed my hesitation. Then open it, a whisper. Right against the glass. I grabbed my phone, rolled off the bed, and sprinted into the bathroom, locking myself inside. My hands shook as I called 911. I didn't whisper. I didn't care if he heard me. By the time officers arrived, the shadow was gone. They searched the yard, the surrounding area, the entire building. Nothing. But one of the officers, an older guy with tired eyes, pulled me aside before leaving. "I've responded to calls like this here before," he said quietly. "Tenants, same unit next to yours. Same complaints." He paused. None of them stayed longer than a few months. I asked him what he meant, but he just shook his head and walked away. That night was the last night I slept in that apartment. I packed everything I owned before sunrise and moved out within the week. I didn't want my deposit back. I didn't want answers. I didn't want closure. But on the morning I left, as I dragged the last box out of my apartment, I noticed something that froze me in my tracks. My doormat, it had been moved at being flipped backward, upside down, crooked. And in the center of it, another sticky note. Just 4 words this time. "You sleep too much." I left the building and never looked back. If you've ever lived in an apartment, you know how thin the walls can be. You hear muffled conversations, footsteps above your head, sometimes even someone's TV through the vents. Annoying, sure, but nothing you get used to more quickly. But when I moved into my new place last winter, I realized something strange about the man living next door. He didn't make noise. He didn't talk. He didn't play music. Not once. For the first week, I thought the unit was empty. Then, one night around 11 p.m., I heard tapping, not loud, soft. Precise. It came from the wall next to my bed. Tap, 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 3 taps. Then silence. I assumed he'd accidentally bumped something into the wall. Apartments do that, but the next night, the tapping happened again. Tap. 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 Same. Exact. Tap. I put my ear against the wall, trying to figure out what he was doing. Silence. Then so sudden, I flinched 3 taps right where my ear was. Tap. 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 I jerked away, my heart pounding. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined someone standing with their head pressed against the other side of the drywall, listening to my breathing. For the next few days, nothing happened. But then, the tapping changed. It became slower, closer, more deliberate. Some nights it seemed like it was following me, moving from the bedroom wall to the living room wall, then the kitchen wall, as if he knew where I was. As if he was tracking me through the walls. At first, I tried to laugh it off. Maybe he was just weird. Maybe AD didn't realize how thin the walls were. But then came the whispering. Low, breathless, too soft to understand. Except for one night, when it rose just enough for me to make out a single word. Closer. I stepped back from the wall instantly. My whole body went cold, like my blood had stopped circulating. I stared at the painted drywall as if it could open at any second and reveal a face staring back. For the rest of the night, I sat in my living room with every light on, scrolling through my phone just to distract myself. Sometime around 3 a.m., exhaustion finally hit me, and I dozed off on the couch. When he woke up, The sun was rising and something was wrong. The hallway smelled strange, musty, like damp wood and something metallic. I stepped out of my apartment and froze. A long, thin crack ran down the wall between my unit and my neighbor's. I leaned closer. It wasn't a crack. It was a hole, no bigger than a coin, but definitely not there the night before. I crouched, my breath shallow, and hesitantly peered through it. Darkness. Just pitch black. But then, movement. Something pale shifted on the other side, something that looked horrifyingly like an eye. It slid into view, slowly, deliberately, until it filled the entire hole bloodshot, wide, focused directly on me. I gasped and stumbled backward so hard I nearly tripped over my own feet. The eye didn't blink, didn't move. It just watched. I ran back inside and slammed my door shut, locking it twice. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I paced in circles, trying to understand what I had seen. Eventually, I convinced myself to march straight to the building manager. He looked exhausted, like he'd already dealt with too much that day. "You said the guy next door's quiet, right?" I asked. He nodded. "Never had a problem with him." "Why?" I told him everything. The tapping, the whispering, the hole with the eye staring at me. He frowned, then stood up and motioned for me to follow him. When we reached my hallway, the crack in the wall was still there, but the hole was gone, smoothed over as if someone had filled it perfectly in less than an hour. The manager checked the neighboring unit. He knocked first. "No answer." He unlocked the door, pushing it open, and the smell hit us immediately. Rot. Mold. Something foul and stale, like the air hadn't been touched in years. Dust covered every surface. Cobwebs hung from the corners. The apartment was completely empty. "He doesn't live here anymore," the manager murmured, his voice trembling. "He moved out last spring." I felt dizzy, but I heard him every night. The manager didn't respond. I left that apartment the very next week, but sometimes, late at night, in my new place, miles away from that old building, I swear, I still hear faint tapping in the walls. Tap. Tap. Tap tap, as if someone followed me, as if he wants me to come closer again. My third story happened a few years ago, back when I rented a small basement unit in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The place was cheap, a little damp, and always smelled faintly like old books, but I needed something affordable, and it fit my budget. The stairs leading down to my door were narrow and dimly lit by a single flickering bulb above. I always felt uneasy walking down them, especially at night, but I got used to it after a while. One evening, around midnight, I came home from work exhausted. As I walked down the steps, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise. It felt like someone was watching me. I paused and glanced up toward the street. There was no one. I shook it off, unlocked my door, and stepped inside. After microwaving dinner, I collapsed onto the couch. That's when I heard it. A slow, heavy exhale. Right outside my door, I froze, holding my breath. Another exhale followed, closer this time. Almost pressed against the door, I tiptoed to the peephole and looked out. Nothing. I assumed I was overtired and imagining things. I went to bed and slept hard. The next morning, when I stepped outside, I saw footprints on the stairs. Wet ones. Bare. Leading down toward my door, and then back up again. I stood there for nearly a minute, trying to understand them. It hadn't rained. The ground was dry. There was no reason for anyone to have wet feet. That night, I reinforced my lock and shoved a chair under the doorknob before going to sleep. But around 3 a.m., a loud thud jolted me awake. Someone was at the bottom of the stairs. I heard slow, shuffling steps, descending one at a time. Thud. 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 Then breathing. Heavy. Labored. Then a whisper. "Open it." My heart dropped into my stomach. I crept to the door, not to open it, but to look again through the peephole. This time, there was someone. A tall man stood only a foot away, facing my door. His clothes were soaked, dripping water onto the concrete. His hair hung in wet strands across his face. But his eyes were wrong. Too wide. Too still. Like he wasn't really seeing anything, just staring blindly forward. He took one shaky step closer, lifting his hand and pressing it flat against my door. Water dripped from his fingers, running down the wood and pooling on the floor. He whispered again. "Let me in. It's cold." I backed away slowly, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I crouched behind the couch, gripping my phone with sweaty fingers as I dialed 911. The police arrived within minutes, but by the time they got there, the man was gone. No footprints, no puddles. No sign anyone had been there at all. One of the officers checked the security footage from the house above mine. After reviewing it twice, he came back looking deeply unsettled. There was no one on the stairs. He said quietly, "You walked down alone last night. You walked out alone this morning. Nobody else came near your unit." But I saw him. I insisted. He was right there. The officer didn't argue. He just gave me a sympathetic look and suggested I stay somewhere else for a few days. I didn't go back. I broke the lease and moved out within a week. But every now and then, when I'm descending a staircase, I swear I hear him behind me. Thud, 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 thud. And sometimes, on cold nights, I feel warm breath on my neck, like he finally caught up. If you made it to the end, tell me, which of the 3 neighbors terrified you the most? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment so you don't miss the next true horror stories. And remember, sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones living right next door.